This is 5 horrifying night shift stories about regular, everyday, jobs. Like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let the nightmare fuel begin.
Gas station. Submitted by RJ. It was a quiet night at the gas station, and I was on the night shift as usual. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the aisles of chips, candy, and soda. As I sat behind the counter, my eyes grew heavy with exhaustion. I was just about to doze off when I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the back. I got up from my chair and cautiously made my way to the back of the store. I was surprised to find that the door to the storage room was wide open. I could see nothing but darkness inside. My heart began to race as I stepped closer to the open door. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind blew past me, sending shivers down my spine. I could hear strange whispers coming from the darkness, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. I tried to turn and run, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. Then, out of nowhere, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. They seemed to be staring right at me, and I could feel their cold, piercing gaze. The eyes began to move closer, and I could hear the sound of footsteps getting louder and louder. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I was frozen in fear as the glowing eyes approached me. It was then that I realized that I was not alone in the gas station. There was something else there with me, something that was not human. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the store into total darkness. I could hear something breathing heavily, and I knew that I had to get out of there. I turned and ran towards the front of the store, stumbling over my own feet in the darkness. As I burst through the front door, I could see that the gas pumps had all been turned off. I looked back towards the store, and I could see the glowing eyes staring at me from the darkness. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, I sprinted towards my car and peeled out of the parking lot. It wasn't until I was miles away that I finally felt safe. I realized that I had just experienced something truly terrifying, something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. And I knew that I would never work the night shift at that gas station ever again. Hospital. Submitted by Callie. I had been working the night shift at the hospital for weeks, and I was beginning to feel like I was the only person alive in the world. The silence of the halls was oppressive, and the only sounds were the occasional beep of a monitor or the whir of a machine. I got up from my chair and cautiously made my way towards the room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see a faint light coming from inside. As I approached, I could hear the sound of someone sobbing. I pushed open the door, and I saw a patient lying in the bed, writhing in pain. Her eyes were closed, and she was muttering to herself, as if in a dream. As I walked closer, I could see that her skin was pale, and her veins were visible through her thin skin. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and stared directly at me. Her eyes were dark and filled with terror. I tried to speak, but my vocal cords were paralyzed with fear. She then spoke, but her words were not her own. It was as if something else was speaking through her. "Leave this place," the voice hissed. "This hospital is cursed. You must leave before it's too late." I was frozen in terror, unable to move. The patient then began to convulse violently, and her body contorted in ways that should not have been possible. I watched in horror as her body twisted and turned, and then with a final scream, she went limp. I tried to call for help, but my phone was dead, and the intercom system was silent. I was alone in the hospital with something that was not of this world. I tried to run, but every door and every window was locked. I was trapped. I knew that I was not going to make it out of the hospital alive. I was going to become another victim of the curse that had claimed so many lives before me. And as I approached the figure in the darkness, I knew that I was going to become a part of the hospital's dark history, never to be seen or heard from again. On to the next. Nursing home. Submitted by Kay. I had been working the night shift at the nursing home for a few months now, and I was starting to get used to the creaking floorboards and the sounds of shuffling feet. But there was one thing that I could never get used to, the feeling that I was being watched. It started with little things, like the feeling of someone brushing past me in the dark, or the sound of someone whispering my name. I tried to brush it off as my imagination, but the feeling persisted. One night, as I was doing my rounds, I heard a strange noise coming from one of the patients' rooms. It was a low, guttural growl, and it sent shivers down my spine. I opened the door, and I saw a patient lying in the bed, writhing in pain. Her eyes were closed, and she was sweating profusely. As I tried to comfort her, the growling grew louder and more insistent. It was then that I realized that the sound was not coming from the patient, but from somewhere else in the room. I looked around, but I could see nothing in the darkness. And then, out of nowhere, a hand reached out from under the bed and grabbed my ankle. I screamed and tried to pull away, but the hand was too strong. I fell to the ground, and the growling turned into a sinister laughter. I looked under the bed, and I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, I scrambled to my feet and ran out of the room. As I ran down the hallway, I could hear the sound of something chasing me, the sound of its breath, and its footsteps getting closer and closer. I reached the door to the outside, but it was locked. I was trapped. And then, as I turned around, I saw a figure standing in the darkness, shrouded in shadows. It was a figure that I had seen before, but I couldn't quite place where. And then, with a sudden jolt, I realized who it was, a patient who had passed away a few weeks ago. The figure then stepped closer, and I could see that its skin was pale and its eyes were black. The last thing I remember was the feeling of cold fingers wrapping around my throat and the sound of sinister laughter echoing through the halls of the nursing home. And then, this next one is sure to give you chills.
Enjoying this collection so far? Please, like and subscribe to keep our channel on the map.
Police station. By cause and effect. I had just started my night shift at the police station and was settling into my desk when I heard a strange noise coming from the interrogation room. It was a low moan, almost like a growl. I got up and cautiously made my way towards the room. As I got closer, the noise grew louder and more sinister. I could feel my heart racing as I reached for the doorknob. The door creaked open, and I saw a suspect sitting in the chair, his eyes closed and his head tilted back. At first, I thought he was asleep, but then I saw that his body was contorting in unnatural ways. His arms twisted and turned, and his fingers elongated into razor-sharp claws. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged towards me. I stumbled backwards, but he was too fast. He pinned me against the wall, his claws digging into my skin. I screamed for help, but there was no one around. As I struggled to break free, I could hear the sound of something else in the room, something that wasn't human. With a sudden jolt, the suspect's body convulsed and twisted, and he let out a blood-curdling scream. When he finally fell to the ground, his body was lifeless. I tried to call for backup, but my phone was dead, and the intercom system was silent. I was alone in the station with something that was not of this world. As I made my way through the dark corridors, I could hear the sound of something following me, the sound of its breath, and its footsteps getting closer and closer. And in the distance, I could see a figure, shrouded in darkness, beckoning me forward. I knew that I was not going to make it out of the station alive. I was going to become another victim of the evil that had claimed the suspect's body. And as I approached the figure in the darkness, I knew that I was going to become a part of the station's dark history, never to be seen or heard from again. As always, we saved the best for last. How the hell did I get up here?
Want your story told? It's easy. You can now submit your terrifying experiences to chillreal.stories@gmail.com. Try to keep it below 400 words, or 2,000 characters, and include your first name or web handle. We look forward to hearing from you. Let's continue. Oh, and please, no profanity or sexually explicit content. Now, let's, for real, get back to the show.
Prison. Submitted by Ross and Byrne. I had just started my night shift at the prison, and as I walked through the empty hallways, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I tried to tell myself that it was just my imagination, but the feeling persisted. As I passed by one of the cells, I heard a faint whispering. It was too quiet to make out what was being said, but it was there, a constant murmur that sent chills down my spine. I decided to investigate, and as I approached the cell, the whispering grew louder and more insistent. I looked through the bars, but I could see nothing in the darkness. Suddenly, with an impromptu burst of energy, a figure appeared in the cell, shrouded in shadows. It was a prisoner, a man who had been executed years ago. If my assumption is correct. His skin was pale, and his eyes were black. He reached out his hand, and I could feel the coldness emanating from his fingers. I tried to pull away, but his grip was too strong. He pulled me towards him, and I could see his mouth moving. but I could hear no sound. But it looked as if he was muttering, "I don't belong here." Now, with a sudden jolt, the figure disappeared, leaving me alone in the cell. I stumbled backwards, trying to regain my composure, but the feeling of dread persisted. As I made my way through the dark corridors, I could hear the sound of something following me, the familiarity of its breath, and its footsteps getting closer and closer. And, in the further, I could see a figure, shrouded in darkness, beckoning me forward. I knew that I was not going to make it out of the prison alive. I was going to become another victim of the evil that had claimed the prisoner's body. And as I approached the figure in the darkness, I knew that I was going to become a part of the prison's dark history, never to be seen or heard from again. Now you see me. Now you don't.
So, there you have it. 5 horrifying night shift stories about regular, everyday, jobs. Are you as terrified as I am? Just kidding. On a serious note, thank you so much for your interest in our channel. Again, you can submit your story at chillreal.stories@gmail.com. You are very appreciated. Till next time. Good day.